All right, let's talk about when it's important to be updating resources versus creating resources. We're going to talk about those two things and when you should focus on one over the other, and when you shouldn't be worried about, say, updating, or when you shouldn't be worried about creating, and where you should focus your time and where you're going to get the biggest bang for your time buck based on where you're at inside of your TPT business. I'm going to start by saying that in the beginning, when you are first starting your TPT store, I would not spend a whole lot of time on updating unless you've made a critical mistake. So when I'm still stocking my store, I'm still trying to get up to 50 resources. The only time that I would go back to update resources would be if I had made a critical mistake, meaning the product is not usable, it contains errors, or it contains some sort of copyright or trademark violations or something like that. Okay. If it's something that could get me into trouble or put a bad taste in a buyer's mouth, then yes, I do want to go ahead and fix that and I want to correct it. I want to take the time to do that now. But if it's just a matter of I've learned more, I've grown more, and I want to update those resources, you're going to want to hold off. And let's talk about why for a second. Your first few products, for most people, are not going to be your best work. But the thing about it is you have to create in order to learn. And the more you create, the more you learn. And over time, you hear tips, you see better examples, and you really start to hone your craft. But if you go back and you try to apply everything that you learn every time you learn something new, then what's going to happen is it's going to do two things. Number one, you're going to waste a lot of time because you're going to learn something new this month and you're going to learn something new next month. And guess what? You're going to feel like both of those things are critical and both of those things need to be implemented right away. Let's say you learn something new about covers. And so you go back this month and you update all your old covers. Well, 3 months from now, you learn something else about covers and you're like, oh no, none of those are good. I need to go back and update them all again. Well, guess what just happened? That update that you did a few months ago, it was pretty much a waste of your time because you were just going to do it again. And so you'll end up spending so much time doing things that are going to have to be redone in the future anyway. And so just go ahead and tell yourself in the beginning, until you reach a certain number of products in your store, maybe 50 resources or 75 or even 100 resources. And until you reach that product milestone, just tell yourself, when I get to this number of resources, or when I complete this set of products, or when I get to this point in my business, I will go back and I will update everything. And when I update it and when I make those changes, I'll be even better. I'll be even more seasoned and I'll know even more than I know right now. And so you're going to get better bang for your time buck by waiting a little bit longer because you're still learning. Okay. The second thing is that if you continue to go back and you make those updates over and over again, you're going to get really frustrated because every time you learn something new, instead of it being something that's like, oh, that's exciting, I'm going to tuck that back for later, or I'm going to apply that to the new resources that I'm making right now, you're going to feel frustrated and you're going to be like, oh, now I've got to go change this again. Or oh, that means everything I did it wrong. And you're going to become frustrated with the process instead of being able to enjoy the process of learning. Learning will become something that is frustrating to you. And we've all experienced this with our students, right? Where we want them to just enjoy the thing that they're learning and know that they're learning and know that they're growing and know that it's all going to come together in the end. Instead, they just get fixated and hung up on the mistake that they realized they just made a few minutes ago, or the mistake that they realized they made last week, and you're wanting them just to continue to keep their eye on the ball and just keep moving forward. Well, that's what it's like when you're growing your TPT business. In the very beginning, it's best to just focus on learning and growing and apply what you're learning and this new skills that you're acquiring to the new resources that you're creating, and then just give yourself a timeline or an end goal and say, when I get to here, I'll go back and I'll apply all of these new skills. I'll take all of this new knowledge and I'll apply it to those older resources and I'll give them a thorough update then, okay? This is going to allow you to really focus on one thing at a time. But once you get to that point where you've learned quite a bit, maybe 50 resources, 75, 100 resources, just depending on the types of products that you're rolling out, just depending on how much you're learning and how much time it's been, then once you get to that point, you do want to go back and you do want to start updating some of those older resources, because you will find that you have learned and you have grown since you posted them, and they probably will need some updating. And at that point, it's going to be a better use of our time, because once we have all of those resources out there, we've created multiple opportunities for buyers to find us. So if I'm going back and I'm continually updating the same 10 resources, I only have 10 opportunities for buyers to find me, right? Chances are they're probably not even going to find those resources for a while. But once I have about 100 resources out there, I've created 100 opportunities for buyers to find me, then they're more likely to come across some of those older resources inside of my store. So I do want to make sure it's a representation of some of my best work. And so I want to go back and I want to start to update those. And so what I like to do is I like to kind of do this cyclically. I will create a line of resources. I'll put them out there. I'll move on. I'll market that line of resources. I'll move on. I'll create another line of resources. And then after about a year, I'll go back and I'll revisit those and say, okay, have I done some new branding? Have I learned some things? Is my style a little bit different? Do I need to bring these previews up to date? What is my data saying? How do I need to change and update these resources in order to meet the current standards that TPT has and the current standards that I have for my own store? And so that's when I'll go back and start looking at those previews and covers and even the products themselves and start revamping those, okay? Now, when should you prioritize one over the other? And really it's a both and for most people. Most people are going to do a balance. They'll create 10 resources, go back and update 5. Create 20 resources, go back and update 10, right? They'll kind of have some sort of a rhythm, which is how I recommend that you do it. That way you don't feel like you're stuck updating older resources for a long period of time, because that can get kind of old. And a lot of times what we as TPT sellers enjoy doing is we enjoy the creation process. And so staggering it and kind of balancing and doing a little bit at a time will allow you to kind of chunk that off so that you're not having to spend months at a time just going back and revising older resources. You can do a little bit of what gives you life, creating products and working on something fun and new, and then go back and update a few, okay? So that's one way to do it. However, when you get to the point where you have several hundred resources in your store, or you're ready to just kind of really slow down the product creation, that's when it's a really good time to go back and to take your time and focus individually on your older resources. Make sure the SEO is up to date. Really sit there and stare at your data. Do I need to change keywords? Do I need to change my previews? Do I need to change my covers? Do I need to change my snippet to make it a little bit more eye-catching? And really go in and make those tweaks and changes so that you are optimizing your individual resources. And that's what I would be doing if I had about 400 or 500 resources in my store and I was ready to just slow down and focus on the resources that I had. And then I could spend all of my time just optimizing individual product listings so that not only did they convert better, but by fixing and tweaking the search engine optimization on those, they're more likely to be found, which means that I'm more likely to have more sales. And so once I have that many products in my store, then I would focus on that. Now, you don't have to get to 500 to do that. You could pause at 100. You could pause at 200. You could pause at any amount that you want. It's going to vary seller to seller based on the products that you have and what it is that you enjoy doing and where your traffic is coming from. But if you're really wanting to focus on growing your TPT traffic organically and getting that organic traffic from TPT, then that's where you want to focus on updating those older resources. So let me recap this. If you're brand new and you don't have 50 products in your store yet, unless it's a critical mistake, I would not focus on updating older resources. I would focus solely on learning, growing, and creating, because the more you create, the more you're going to learn. The longer you do this, the more you're going to see, the more you're going to know, and the more you're going to want to implement inside of your business. And so save yourself the time, the headache, and the hassle, and just put off that updating until after you have reached at least 50 products in your store. If you have 50 to 100 resources in your store, that's when you want to start thinking about maybe creating that balance, right? And saying, okay, for every X number of new products I create, I need to go back and I need to update this many of my older resources. And this is where the question comes in, where people want to know, well, where do I start with updates? Well, the best place to start with updates is going to be with resources that are selling pretty well on their own, but you do know they could do better. if they were updated. And so that's where I would start there. And then the next thing that I would start on is I would start on resources that maybe aren't doing well, but you really feel like they have the potential to do well if you updated their covers, or if you updated their previews, or maybe if you added some content to it and you revised them a little bit. That would be the next area that I would focus on. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like it and subscribe to this channel. I put out weekly content for TPT sellers to help you grow your TPT business. If you want to learn more and grow more with me, then come join Rebranded Teacher Academy. Every single month, RTA members, we meet together and we hold a monthly strategy session where I give you a step-by-step action plan to help you grow your business that month. And then I give you a challenge for that month. And so once you complete that challenge, you're entered to win prizes. It's lots of fun. You're going to love the RTA community. You also get access to my full course and content catalog. So you get access to every piece of content and every course that I've ever created or ever will create, as long as you're a member of RTA. Come join us. It's low monthly cost. You're really going to love it. You can find the link for that down in the description. I'll see you in the next video.